If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've never run out of anything. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. One of my favorite questions to ask groups is to complete this sentence. Life on Earth was better before we ran out of. You're right. There's no answer. At least in the many years of which I've asked that question, I've never heard an answer. Now, if you know of a valuable resource that we've run out of, please send me an email. But here's the problem. We are continually being told that we're running out of things. Just one example. Jimmy Carter in 1976 intoned, "We have about 35 years of oil left on Earth." Okay, if my math is right, that means we ran out in 2011, but we didn't. The coming ice age. In a video from 1976, frightening music plays as Leonard Nimoy speaks in a very worried tone, quote, "There's little doubt that someday the ice will return," end quote. More dramatic music plays, and he continues, quote, "If we are unprepared for the next advance, the results could be hunger and death on a scale unprecedented in all of history. During the lifetime of our grandchildren, Arctic cold and perpetual snow could turn most of the habitable parts of our planet into a polar desert. The next ice age is on its way. At weather stations in the far north, temperatures have been dropping for 30 years. Seacoasts that used to be free of ice now are blocked year-round. According to climatologists, within a lifetime, we might be living in the next ice age," end quote. Okay, let's be simple about this. They were wrong in 1976. What makes you think the climate alarmists are right today? Progress. Quote, "Nothing is more responsible for the good old days than a bad memory," end quote. That's the first line of the book called Progress by Johann Norberg. The quote was attributed to Franklin Pierce Adams. Mr. Norberg goes on to write, quote, "The truth is that the good old days were awful. The great story of our era is that we are witnessing the greatest improvement in global living standards ever to take place." He continues, "Poverty, malnutrition, illiteracy, child labor, and infant mortality are falling faster than at any time in human history," end quote from Johann Norberg in the book Progress. Look, in my lifetime, the percentage of the world living in extreme poverty has dropped from 44% to just over 8%. Now, on its current trajectory, it will approach zero in the next 10 years. Here you go. When Karl Marx died in 1883, the average Englishman was 3 times richer than he was when Marx was born in 1818. Abundance versus scarcity. Now, the magicians and entertainers Penn and Teller were playing a kind of a poker game called Greatest Person in History on one of their TV programs. Now, the game was there were pictures of great people on playing cards. Penn draws a card and pushes all his chips in on the bet because he knew that card would cause him to win the game. The face on the card, are you ready for this? The greatest person in history? Let me tell you one other story to keep you in suspense. I took my students from Dallas Baptist University to the BRIC countries at one point. See, Goldman Sachs came out with the idea of BRIC. The countries with the greatest land, labor, and capital were Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Now, before I took my students to India, it happened that the Dallas Global Alliance was hosting a speech by the Indian ambassador to the United States. Now, the Indian representative strode to the podium. He didn't even say hello, or good morning, or good to be in Dallas. The first words he spoke were, "Please join me in a moment of silence in memory of..." Are you ready for this? This is the guy's name on Penn's poker card. His name is Norman Borlaug. Borlaug grew up in Cresco, Iowa, and earned a PhD in agronomy from the University of Minnesota. First, he went to Mexico and showed them that a dwarf wheat that matured in half the time, so they could double their crop in 1 year. Then he went to India and Pakistan and did very similar things. He's known as the man who saved 1 billion lives. That's abundance. Now for scarcity. That's easy. The father of scarcity was a pastor and economist named Robert Malthus, who in 1798 predicted that humans would overpopulate the earth and there wouldn't be enough food, so it would lead to mass starvation. Look, Malthus was wrong, and every Malthusian since him has been wrong. Now here's what happened. He was right on the demand side. Demand did increase. He was wrong on the supply side. He assumed a fixed amount of food. He was very wrong. He did not include in his calculations the increase in supply caused by the creativity of humans. We gained that creativity by being made in the image of God. Contributions from people like Norman Borlaug or any of the other 7.7 billion people in the world whose minds are working to solve scarcity problems today. 58 of them were in my sophomore macroeconomics class this week. Now, for reference to other Malthusians, just turn on the news tonight. John Kerry, AOC, Thomas Piketty. There's even some old holdovers from the losing side of the famous Simon Ehrlich wager. I'll let you look that up on your own. Who are making calamitous predictions. They're all wrong. Then why do we keep listening to Malthusians since they're all wrong? Well, here's one answer. The negativity instinct. In the book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling, there's a chapter titled The Negativity Instinct. It explains why we always think the past was better. He provides 3 reasons. 1, the misremembering of the past. 2, selective reporting by journalists and activists. And 3, the feeling that as long as things are bad for some people, it's heartless to say that things are getting better in the macro. Mr. Rosling goes on to write, quote, "Though the world faces huge challenges, we have made tremendous progress. This is the fact-based worldview. Every group I talk with thinks the world is more frightening, more violent, and more hopeless. In short, more dramatic than it really is. They are not thinking, they are feeling," end quote from Hans Rosling. Now, for more on that subject, I'll refer you to my podcast number 97, which has that same title, Feeling versus Thinking. Oh, you'll want to look at Mr. Rosling's work at his website titled gapminder.org. Actually, he died soon after writing the book. The work is carried on today by his son and daughter-in-law. The website is called Gapminder because it tries to reveal the facts that show there are no gaps between rich and poor countries. Now, that's a subject for another day. Oh, maybe my favorite line from the book Factfulness is the following, quote, "Cuba exhibits the bizarre idea that a central government can solve all its people's problems," end quote. Made in the image of God. Now, in my little book titled Economics and the Christian Worldview, I wrote, quote, "There's a limited amount of land and God isn't making any more. But he is making creative human beings who discover more efficient ways of using it," end quote. Another one. In his book, The Ultimate Resource, Julian Simon wrote, quote, "There's no physical or economic reason why human resourcefulness and enterprise cannot forever continue to respond to impending shortage and existing problems. Adding more people means there will be more people to solve these problems and leave us with a bonus of lower cost and less scarcity in the long run." Continuing to quote, "The ultimate resource is people, skilled, spirited, and hopeful people who will exert their wills and imaginations for their own benefit and so inevitably for the benefit of us all," end quote from Mr. Simon. One of my favorite quotes comes from the first line of the book, The Great Escape, by Nobel Prize-winning economist Angus Deaton, who teaches at Princeton. Quote, "Life is better now than at almost any time in history," end quote. And my extension is, it's going to get better. Why do I say that? Because I believe people are made in the image of God and they are creative. few more sentences from Mr. Deaton. Quote, more people are richer and fewer people live in dire poverty. Lives are longer and parents no longer routinely watch a quarter of their children die, end quote. Now, I have more to say about the book titled Superabundance in an upcoming podcast, but I want to close with a line from that book today. Quote, abundance is growing at a faster rate than population. We call that state of affairs superabundance. Additional human beings tend to benefit rather than impoverish the rest of humanity, end quote. At this rate, we may never run out of anything. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time. For more information, please visit us online at davearnott.com. If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them online or in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.